said the snow's starting to melt.
I mean, the non-answer? Wow. Tell me what the hell it does.
It's go for a weekend drive with me.
And I think
Where's my
that's our
receipt?
take on it as well, but I don't know that they're gonna disclose.
I'm gonna call him. I'm gonna call him and say no.
We drove up to Twin Falls. We went out through
It's not illegal to have two, right?
Okay.
That was a BS answer.
Falls and then came back down through. It was like a whole day, but it was fun.
What are the services he wants?
Got a head start on it coming from.
Yeah.
Right? That's the question.
It was kind of,
Was
he
really
said a lot without saying it.
Without Steve.
I thought I had my wife talk you into going down there this weekend, but
Just in case you.
counting the pennies.
Oh, there's
No, we better not.
so great. In fact, I don't know if you saw
I had a reservation.
And it's just opening stuff, right?
Yeah.
To the resident.
Okay, welcome tonight to our general meeting for City Council. We'll get started. We're going to start by having the Pledge of Allegiance by Shannon Ellsworth.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. 4.2 is City Council comments and recognitions. Would anyone on the council like to comment?
Alan's got his fix already.
Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to item number 5, public comment. Audience members may bring any item to the City Council's attention. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. State law prohibits the council from acting on items that do not appear on the agenda. Public comments for this meeting will also be conducted electronically. Any person interested in addressing the council may submit a comment by emailing recorder@harriman.org or by visiting harriman.org/agendas and minutes, where there is a link to fill out an online public comment form. Your statement will be incorporated into the public record. So we'll go ahead and open it for public comment.
Good evening. This is not a typical public comment, but I emailed the mayor earlier and he invited me to introduce myself to you. My name is Shannon Ellsworth, and I do government affairs for Rio Tinto. We're happy to be neighbors and partners with Harriman City. I wouldn't normally dive into a personal introduction, but I'll deviate tonight. I grew up in this area. I grew up in South Jordan. Rio Tinto is the world's second largest mining and minerals company, and so many of our employees come from across the world, but I'm very local. And so anything that you need, I hope you'll reach out to me. I hope you'll save my number. I put my card up on the desk. Save my number, call or text me if something comes up. I'd rather have too many texts than not enough. And we want to be great neighbors. We want to be great partners. If there's any kind of complaint or question, just reach out. And yeah, like I said, we're ready to be great partners and want to participate in transparent processes when you need our help. So anything that I can answer for you?
I don't think so, but thank you for being here tonight, introducing yourself and providing your contact information. That's great for us, and we really appreciate the partnership that we have with Rio Tinto, and we look forward to expanding upon that. And thank you for leading our pledge.
Great. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to comment? Jackie, is there any online? Okay, perfect. We'll move on to City Council Board and Committee reports. Does anyone have any?
Just a quick comment from the Association of Municipal Councils meeting we had the other day. It's cool we're hosting those here at Harriman. Its attendance has been awesome so far this year. Great engagement from the municipalities. We had a conversation just in the last day or so with Dr. Reichert, who is kind of a living legend. He's probably one of the foremost experts in the entire nation on municipal broadband development, smart city infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. And listening to his presentation about the applications for broadband infrastructure in improving traffic efficiency, water use, pollution levels, police response times, public safety issues, I mean, on and on and on and on and on. It is clear that broadband infrastructure needs to be looked at as a key service or a key utility of the city just as much as power and water and sewer are. And I think that one of the points that got made and repeated in the meeting is that high-speed internet and broadband are two different, broadband infrastructure are two different things. Broadband infrastructure can be a means to accomplishing high-speed internet, but just because you have high-speed internet in your community doesn't mean that you have broadband infrastructure to support a smart city. And the level of engagement, the excitement from all the municipalities was off the charts. This is definitely something that everybody's talking about. But I felt it was important to talk to the council about this and also share this publicly, is some of our neighboring communities have taken some rapid steps in addressing high-speed internet in their communities, but they haven't taken a bigger consideration of the big picture of broadband infrastructure for smart cities. So the Harriman City has a task force designed to talk about high-speed internet and broadband infrastructure. There's going to be a report coming to the council here soonish. As soon as we can get some of the details written up and presentable. So, but it's just an important thing to be considering the relative importance of a broadband infrastructure for not only what the city is now, but the city's future. So that's it.
We had our first Veterans and Military Advisory Committee last evening. We got the ball rolling with that group with the new organization for 2022. And we talked about our first event coming up for our, I believe it's going to be Memorial Day is the first event. So we're excited about that. And if you are former military or veteran or in current military and you want to be part of that discussion or group, please reach out to us. And it's a great opportunity to help veterans in this community, as well as help with events and other items. So,
Mayor, do you have any to add? Okay. Okay, thank you. As the mayor alluded to, we had the opportunity to take our youth council up to the Capitol a few days ago and spend some time with Representative Perucci. We were able to go up and sit in and observe a session for a while in the legislature and help them understand a little bit more about the process and how bills are worked through the process. They were able to take some good backdoor tours and go into the different chambers and really get a good feel for what the process is up there. So I'm grateful to Representative Perucci for taking the time. I know it's hard to squeeze out time during the legislative session, but she spent her lunchtime with us, took them into a caucus room and explained the process and really clarified a lot of things for our youth. So I'm really appreciative of that. That was a great experience for them. And I'm grateful that the mayor and I were able to participate with them. Just a quick bit of news on the garbage district, Wasatch Front, Waste and Recycling. We have been trying for several years now to move out of a special service district into a local district. There's some kind of an extra layer of bureaucracy that comes with the special service district, and it's been kind of a long process, but the county council passed a resolution yesterday allowing that to move forward. So now it kicked off a public hearing process. I think that public hearing process is going to stay open for 38 days. And then at the end of that 38 days, then the council will have the opportunity to just to create us into a local district, which really puts the representatives closer to the people. So every person that's on the board of the garbage district is an elected official from the entity that they're representing. And so it really makes it so it's closer to the people, which I really respect. So I'm grateful for the county for moving that along and for all the efforts that were put in by all the individuals to get that taken care of. And then I had our water board meeting right before this. There are several pieces of legislation that affect water right now. Most of them are just trying to move towards conservation efforts, which I greatly appreciate. I'm hopeful that what we do is move further and further into correct data so we really understand water in our state, understand what our capacity for growth is based on water usage, and we make good legislation based on factual data that says what our state can actually support. And then if we're going to hit a wall, then we're able to make conservation legislation that helps us to exceed that or responsibly grow to a certain point. So we have gotten some nice storms, let's see, in October and December, but January was the third driest on record, so that was not good. And so we're praying every other month. So hopefully February we get a lot more snow, because every day we lose about 1% to 2% of our not our snowpack, but our availability, because it doesn't stretch out over time. So even if there's 6 feet of snow today, there might still be 6 feet of snow in 30 days from now, but it needed to be substantially more than 6 feet at that point. So don't stop praying for snow, or whatever it is that you do to. We need to continue to get snow, because we're a long ways from being out of this drought. I think I've mentioned before about my convention in Vegas about CRUA and just the reservoirs, and we're a long ways from being out of that. So we have to continue to implement conservation measures in our cities, in our municipalities, but most importantly in our own homes. So I'll continue to beat that drum. Okay, that's all mine, and I'm not used to being the person.
Councilmember Brown, can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
About your service on the waste board? Is there any possibility that the waste board has considered making a payment option online for that?
Yeah, I think you can make online payments.
Not from the website, you can't. It's not on the Wasatch Front Waste and
Oh.
Recycling District website. There's no links to any online payments of any kind.
I've set mine up that way.
There is an online portal that you utilize, but it's through the same, it's the same one that the city uses.
The Express Bill Pay?
Express Bill Pay,
Okay.
yep. It's the same one the city
They
uses.
should indicate that on there. I was just
Oh.
looking at their website going, huh, that's a big pain in the rear.
I'm like, I know you can.
So I do it
because
through,
that's how
I do it through a
pay
bill pay service anyway, but I was, just happened to be on the website recognizing that there was no link or information on there. I thought it would be a good thing for them to put that on there.
I'm making a note right now. Thank you for that feedback. Okay. All right, we'll move on to item number 7, reports, presentations, and appointments. 7.1, discussion on process for proposed amendments applied by for Harriman 73 Partners related to the Automall development. Michael.
Thank you. As the council knows, as in your packets, the Planning Commission has recently heard 3 separate land use applications, 1 for a general plan, 2 for a zoning amendment, zoning map amendment. These 3 amendments are also covered by a proposed MDA that the city is reviewing. The city council has, 2 members of the city council have been looking at early drafts of that or concepts for that. Because we have these overlapping or interconnected proposals, the staff is wanting direction from the council whether or not you would like us to bring to you for consideration at the future city council meetings the general plan and the rezone amendments, or is it the council's preference that those requests be held pending the outcome of our discussions with the developer on a development agreement, and bring those in concert together to you? So that's all we're looking for, is just how does the council want us to process these requests?
Okay. Does the council have any questions for Michael? If not, I'd open it for discussion to the council.
And looking at this one, I'm trying to prepare for it. To me, it's kind of, tell me if I'm saying this wrong. The question is, do we continue with applications on their own as they've been submitted in? Or is it part of a bigger MDA, which would be a master plan, that we need to do a master plan that they would be a part of, that we approve all at the same time, which is what we normally do for something like that? Am I restating that properly?
Well, in the development agreements, we have often agreed to what's the land use plan for these areas, and what would be the zoning tools that would be appropriate for those land uses. That's common, right? We see that as an exhibit within our MDAs. In this case, the council may have an opportunity to make a decision on a general plan and a rezoning amendment before we finalize the MDA. Is the council comfortable with that? Or would you rather suspend this process and wait for the outcome of the MDA discussions and then bring them to you together?
Just me, I'm going to say my answer would be dependent on an if. And to me, the if is the applicant wanting us to proceed with an individual application on its own merits, or do we want us to consider it as part of something larger? And if it's the latter, then it needs to be held as part of a bigger plan that needs to be worked out. If it's the first, then we can continue with the application as is on its own, but it wouldn't be part of an MDA. I don't know that that would make sense.
And I would feel similar to Councilman Henderson on that. If it's one project or one, right now we have 2 or 3 applications. If it's going to be part of the MDA or it's going to be contained in that aspect or in that scope of work, it should fall in the MDA.
So we'll hold it for the MDA. And there is a 4th application. There was a community meeting this week on another rezone application that hasn't been heard by the Planning Commission yet. Right now we have 3 that have been heard and forwarded to the council for potential review.
And then also, if they are individual projects, each one can move along separately, but if they're combined as one, I think that it
But they will be, or at least they're conceptually right now, part of that MDA discussion.
At least to me, an MDA, and this is where we've gotten in trouble with previous MDAs that we're all trying to clean up, is it's supposed to be a master development agreement. And it needs to be a master plan. right? This is what it
Right.
is, soup to nuts, and here's all the component pieces of it and how they fit in, and like, if that's what we're trying to do, then that's what the process needs to be, not bring them in one at a time and hope that it works out in the end.
And admittedly, when we've been working with Harriman 73 Partners is the applicant on these land use applications. Initially, Chase put together a timeline as to how we might process these different requests. I think we had envisioned that the MDA would keep pace with these general plan and zoning amendments. But obviously, the MDA does require more work, more discussion, and it didn't keep pace with the other parts of the proposals. So the general plan and zoning got out in front of the MDA.
You have any comments, Steve?
I'm trying to finish my thought here before I speak, but I'd say in general, I think I agree with what Councilman Henderson said and Councilman Hodges about if we wanted any aspect of it individually, I think can move forward on its own merit, right? If there's a rezone request that can move forward, if there's a a building permit request for something to get started, or I think all of those are. But I think there's an effort, and I would say maybe even a desire or even a need on behalf of 73 Partners to make some of these decisions, I think, are requisite for the rest of the effort on the MDA to continue to go forward, if that makes sense. So I would put it this way. I think that it's probably appropriate to make sure that we have a broad plan and agreement in place if we're going to make those a part of that. But I don't necessarily know that that has to be this really arduous, super long. It's not a huge piece of property. It's not got a lot of massive complexities and things like that. I think it could be done, put in big quotes, relatively expeditiously. What we consider expeditious may not match what the applicant thinks is expeditious, but I don't think there's any reason we would need to delay any of that process or create obstacles in that process. I think we can have those discussions and get some of those matters identified or settled or even codified. I mean, Chase can write it all in a day. It's not a big deal. I guess in the spirit of the request, yeah, I think we can still keep things moving forward while saying we should complete the MDA as part of this. I guess that would be my comment.
Mayor, do you have a comment? Thank you. I would concur. I believe that, I think it's kind of typically our process, if we're looking at amending master plans, if we're looking at amending zoning and things like that, we, as a project, we would follow the MDA process, and so that those would all be part of it. But typically, we all see them on the same night for approval of this, and approval of the
Right.
MDA. So I believe that that's the process. I believe that's in the best interest of the city to move forward on that. And the developer tends to provide a better development that way when it's planned.
And again,
master.
I think that was our original intent. It's just that these pieces got, through a first step sooner, so.
And I assume we're moving forward with the MDA process. I think those meetings have started, began, and they're moving forward. So I believe that as long as we just keep that ball rolling on that side, we should be fine.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Direction? Good?
So we'll wait to have the work session on these items that are encompassed within this draft MDA. until we have that resolved, until we either have a proposal on the MDA, or perhaps if we,
Well, and
maybe
the
it's
applicant
withdrawn,
has
or-
some say in that as well. That's why I kind of say it's an if. If they want to push
Move
ahead with
forward.
these individual applications, then like I would say we would have to, my position is that we'd have to continue with those on their own, not considering them as part of a master development.
Yeah.
And if they want to continue with those applications on their own, that's up to them, and we can go through that proper process for those. If they're asking that be part of a master plan, then that needs to go through that process. It's kind of up to them, I would think.
Yeah, Councilmember Henderson is correct. We have a legal duty to proceed through the process that we have articulated in our code. However, the developer can say, hey, why don't we suspend that for the time being while we work out some of these other details? Another thought I had for the council to maybe consider is you do have a process in place. You've adopted this MDA policy that authorizes members of the council to go into these working groups. It's not built into the policy, but there is also an opportunity for those members to come back and say, hey, here's where we're at, right? Have that as a council update of,
Yeah.
here's where those meetings are, here's what we've been talking about, and have that conversation along the road, just so we're not dumping it all at the very end when we talk about it, right?
I would actually even add to that and ask Nathan that maybe on our agendas for our work meetings, there's a little standing, if we have MDA committees open, we should have an update on our MDA committee, so we're all coming along at the same pace, so we don't all go, oh, what, you were talking about that, just so everybody's kind of updated every council meeting. on
Very
this.
much agree.
Okay, and yes, I agree completely. If they desire to move forward, we follow the legal process. If not, I would prefer to encompass it in a development agreement. It just feels like it gets done a little better that way.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Okay. Let's see. We will move on to 7.2, consideration to modify the landscape design standards. Jonathan.
Good evening, council. There's two ordinances in the land design standards that have come up in question we want to chat about. Before we get that, I really just have pictures on the next line. We can get to that in a second. But these two items include live plant material requirements that we require on all designs, whether that's a city project or private development projects, as well as artificial turf or artificial plantings in general. Now, I would say this is the item here today is simply, we don't have a proposal for you for these changes necessarily, but rather some items of consideration to think about, and if you want us to proceed with these changes, then we would begin that process. And that process is essentially, because it's in Title 10, we would have to start with Planning Commission, and that's where the formal proposal starts, and then the recommendation of the Planning Commission, then we come to you. But what we wanted to do tonight was just bring up those considerations that have come across staff's table, and wanted to bring them to you to see if that's how we want to proceed with making these changes. Again, so for the live plant material, the requirement is 75% live plant material. And that again, that's at maturity. I'll make that quick clarification. You obviously see on the left, that's what it looks like. 75% at installation. Now when it's mature, it looks something more like on the right. These aren't obviously the same picture, or the same place, excuse me. So that's one item. The other item is surrounding cities, just as an item for reference. They vary from anywhere from 50% to 75%. Currently, right now, it is 75% in Harriman City ordinance and design standard. Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District required a minimum of 50 live plant material, and there wasn't a direct conflict with the minimum of 50 with the current standard, and so we kept it as is. But we've received some petitions to reduce the live plant material. Anyway, so that's why we're here before you today. And then the other picture here, this is some more examples of what a 75% coverage would look like. And then here's the 50. And And also talking about just some additional considerations. We've recently adopted the water efficiency standards in light of water conservation. We would anticipate some reduction there if we reduced the required live plant material from 75 to anything less. And then also we reduce the cost, the capital cost as well. Those are some other items of consideration. Now, artificial turf, now it provides an alternative to live plant material that otherwise would require water, is an item that has been brought to the city. Now, the other item I've written down here is the current ordinance does not explicitly prohibit artificial turf or plants, but rather it states that it cannot be used to meet the open space requirements. So if you've met the open space requirements, you can have artificial turf, it just can't be used to take place or to count towards open space requirements. Now this petition, at least the consideration is, for example, like looking at parks or even usable spaces for sports parks or sports places.
If it's a regulation, full-size soccer field, that could be turf.
Right, yes, that's right.
We need some of those.
So that was a design consideration that's been brought even on capital projects as well. So those are the two items in question that we want to bring up, and is this an important item enough for the council, for us, and for staff to step back and work through the process to start the conversation with Planning Commission and City Council, of course, formally. So that was the question. Does the council have any additional questions for me?
Anyone?
Is a question, is part of these policies consider live plant material is a really broad statement, right?
Correct.
Is there any requirement that would suggest that plant material must be native, water, drought resistant,
Yeah.
limited water type of things? Is that a part of this?
So in addition, so the Harriman City Standards actually has materials that you can use and cannot use, and we obviously encourage the drought resistant and native stuff, but it is not necessarily codified in the ordinance, but the standards overarching are adopted by ordinance into the standards. But to answer your question, it is in the standards and it does encourage those, but is not called out specifically in the ordinance.
I guess my concern would be going from 75 to 25, or from 75 to 50 isn't, I don't think the appearance is necessarily bad or unappealing or detrimental to the city. I generally would support it. But I'd also like to see a transition, perhaps codified, that would move that around from really water-needy plants to plants that are more native and don't need as much water. I think that would make that 50% more impactful.
So Steve, like I've started getting into this pretty deep this year with the Jordan Water Valley for my HOA and for other park strips. I meet with Heidi on Monday. She's doing it for the city and looking at all the aspects. 50% coverage would save our HOA on 70,000 square feet. We're trying to flip approximately $18,000, reducing that cost. And then also upkeep and maintenance. Going through a 75% filled, you get more trash debris and rock debris and more water usage still. And it looks cleaner at the 50% personally from my visual aspect, but it's easier to maintain, cut back. But my concern is upkeep and maintenance. Plants die if your irrigation's not right on spot. But the water conservancy, they have the classes for landscapers get certified, and they have a whole list of vegetation that's proper for the area. They've done a really good job, and I think we can utilize a lot of their information and tools. But I think it would be a great thing even for our city to adopt the lower standard, but maybe have higher standards on plant and other rock bed material or other things like that.
Agree?
Jared, do you have any comment?
I'm fine with the 50%. I was sorry to put you on the spot, but I was going to kind of turn it around because the question that I've been asked before, and I'm sure we'll get asked again, is, well, why do we require anything? Doesn't it use more water sort of thing. And the answers I've gotten from water people have been that, well, if it's all concrete, if it's all rock, everything, it's actually bad for the water ecosystem, right? Because it's just heats everything
Heat
up.
islands,
That's, yeah, right? And it doesn't replenish the aquifers and all kind of stuff. So a balance is good. We need plant cover so we're not just reflecting everything back up. So unless I'm mistaken that way, like we do need to have a requirement for some amount. And I mean, if surrounding areas are 50%, I can't say that I've gone to I'm assuming surrounding cities. I can't say I've gone to any of them and been like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and to your point, Councilmember Henderson, so Lehigh is at 70%, Draper's at 75, South Jordan is at 50, West Jordan is at 50, Saratoga Springs 50, and again, Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District requires, at least on the water efficiency standards, to have a minimum of 50 as well.
There is, I asked this today at the district, just simply because there is something to be said about the shade canopy of mature plants, right? Once they reach maturity, then there's a shade canopy, and which increases moisture in the soil. So then my question was, well, at 75%, with the mature plant, are we actually using less water than we would be at 50% with not as much coverage because more water is evaporating? And it's just kind of speculative either way. They felt comfortable staying at 50% coverage, so I was comfortable with that. The other,
Especially if we require trees, right?
yeah,
I mean, that
yeah.
gives, some of them don't, and that gives a better canopy.
And I might add a quick clarification to that point, which is trees, at least on the ordinance, the current interpretation of the ordinance, the trees would not count toward the live plant material coverage. They
Right.
would be in addition to.
Yeah. The other thing, and it is true, we have too at the district been getting a lot of pushback from developers who are now having to comply with ordinances so that they're no longer eligible for grant money from the district to comply with this. So they're like, well, this is costing us money. And it's like, well, and so my comment, which is very public there, was bummer, just simply because for decades we have been misusing our landscaping, and it's time to fix it, right? And if it's going to cost a little bit more monetarily and save a whole lot of water, it's a decision we have to make, right? And those costs are pass-through. They might not be at your HOA. I don't know what your fees are, but as a home builder, a lot of those costs are pass-through, and they're not staggering, probably $1,000 for a home or things like that, you know. And I'm not suggesting we want to drive up pricing or anything like that, but so then I'll have to walk back on my bummer comment, just because I don't mean it derogative. I just mean that we all have to play our role. You know, if a city enacts an ordinance, the water district shouldn't pay people to comply with the ordinance. So I just feel like there's a fine line to run there. And the same here. I don't want to create an ordinance just because somebody doesn't want to have to comply because it's costing them more money if it's the responsible thing to do in the long run with water. But after listening and asking some more questions on this, I do believe that the 50% coverage, it would be adequate and sufficient, and goes a long ways towards the conservation rule. I do want to tell you, though, that HB 282, are you familiar with that one?
Not currently.
So HB 282, let's see. The bill prohibits certain public or private entities from prohibiting water-wise landscaping and authorizes certain landscaping requirement. It prohibits a municipality, county, or association from adopting an ordinance or governing documents that prohibits a property owner from using water-wise landscape, and provides that ordinances may include water-wise design requirements, including plant density, which cannot exceed 40%. So that bill is, I'm not sure where it's at. I think it's still in committee right now.
Okay.
But it is at 40%. And then it says, and turf grass limitation, which cannot exceed 35% of irrigated area. So there is some legislation on the Hill going on right now.
That we need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that might make the decision for us.
And may I just want to, and I've stated this before, and I'll just state it again, which is, we don't today have the proposal of what we think it should be, but rather petition the council. Should we take a step back and start the process of looking at these items that you're expressing and get that process started? So although I'm showing the 50% as an option, and whatnot, that may not necessarily be what the proposal might be after investigation. Obviously an option, but.
Just one point of clarification too. how's that 50% calculated? How does that get determined? Is it,
So each
if
plant.
you have a big park strip and half of it's gonna be covered and the other half's totally empty, is that, that's technically 50%? Do we have any requirements about disbursement, how much of the?
Design
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious as to how that's calculated.
And it would be the contiguous piece, but it doesn't just specify beyond that, right? So if they have one landscape island, that particular landscape island would have to have the minimum % live plant material. So let's say your park strip is one contiguous piece, whether you push it all to one side and not the other, we don't speak to that specifically. We could make a modification there.
I don't know if I have a strong opinion one way or the other, but I'd be curious as to,
Has it ever been needed in?
yeah, if there's,
No.
if there's any, yeah, just.
Not that I know of. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, but not that I know of. But anyway, so, and maybe those are another thing we can think through. Now, I was just going to add another iteration that, again, that coverage, when we receive landscaping plans, we're asking for the landscape architect to show us the canopy at the maturity, at maturity, as opposed to constructed, right? So we would take that area based on the plan as it is mature.
Understood. And then the reason I ask that question is I look at this picture in the lower right-hand side, and you can see like the middle section, there's this big, different
Open
colored
spot.
gravel that's open,
Yeah.
and then there's some rocks in the middle, and there's some little clusters of plants. So I appreciate the diversity. I think it gives it more visual appeal. So I'm just curious as to if there's something we can encourage. Well, let me be careful how I want to say this. Visually appealing 50% coverage, I guess I might say.
As long as it's not subjective, right? We got to find a way to write that in, right?
Yeah.
That's a problem. It becomes so subjective
Yeah.
that it,
We'll write
I'll
in
let you
visual.
figure out an objective way to write that, right?
So in this lower right picture, I don't think you're going to see a lot of that area unless it's in a bigger development
Yeah,
area, right?
it just
Yeah.
spurred the question.
No, that's perfect. And Sherry, like our HOA, we pay about 9,000 to 10,000 a year in water. We're going to reduce that by 40-some %
Yeah.
in the slip. So we're going to save thousands and thousands through the perpetually, so.
yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm 100% glad about that. My comment was more directed towards, I don't want to continue to see grass in park strips.
Agreed.
And so, and I don't believe that the district should pay people not to put them there if it's an ordinance that's directing that. So that was, it was a different,
It's almost like it went from a carrot to a stick.
yeah, it's true, but it's just so important that, because we all have to be on board with this. Developers, municipalities, everybody has got to get behind this water conservation.
Yeah.
And the nice thing, if you're a home builder, is that if people get behind conservation, you're probably going to be able to continue to build homes because there's still going to be water. If not, then you can't. So it prolongs your livelihood. Anyway, Mayor, did you have some comments on this?
Yeah. HB 282.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, about landscape requirements, yeah. Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
You betcha.
Update, 7.3, update on the safe walk route to
Got
the
it.
new elementary school located within the Hidden Oaks development.
Jonathan, do I have a PDF that I provided you by chance? It was in the staff report. While he's looking for that, the summary is this, that we have construction going along Main Street we anticipate over the next year, which would come in direct conflict with a safe walk route for the new elementary school that's in the Hidden Oaks development. And engineering and the district knew that, and we've been working on this just to kind of solve the problem. And we worked with the district and When I say the district, I should specify that was staff that we have been speaking with, and gave them a couple options, one of them including, hey, is there a possibility for us to bus these that are residents and students that are directly affected by construction? And then the other option is, should we provide a temporary safe walk route? And I'll back up on something really quick. There have been a couple things that have happened and occurred since the staff report was written, and I'll provide an update there. And so here's essentially the map of what the permanent safe walk route looks like. You have so in blue you have the permanent, and yellow you have the temporary. Chief can speak to this if he'd like, but the preference is always that we keep the safe walk routes in the public right-of-way along roadways. And so this was obviously a last resort for us to be able to get kids safely to school. And the district, in conversations with the district, that was their preferred option, and had indicated to staff that temporarily busing would not be an option. Now, I will say this, since the staff report was... Excuse me?
Did they say why?
That was a procedural item that they had mentioned, and they had risen that to a cabinet level. Now, since that time, the board has reached out to council members as well as Wendy, saying, we're open to this, to have this conversation. And so that should be noted, that they're open to the conversation to providing busing temporarily. Now, that hasn't been a commitment. Maybe you could speak to that a
Yeah, I
little
will
bit more.
speak to that. I actually reached out to Darrell Robinson because
Okay.
he's our rep, and he's actually represents this particular area. And I visited with him about a couple of issues, but one of them was this safe walking route here. And he is still trying to basically go to bat for these kids to see if we can't get a bus to there, because they do have some provision as far as if the main road is going to be tore up and under construction, then they can access this temporary busing for these kids. Plus, they don't even, it's like, I think it's like within a mile and a half, well, based on which road, because there's really not even the permanent road there or anything right now. So there's a lot of things for them to still have to work out. So I do believe that this is not a done deal. I won't put Darrell on the spot too much, but I do know that he is working on this and seeing if we can't come up with a better solution. I personally, when I look at this little yellow line here, that puts kids off in very remote areas.
Correct.
Little kids, little elementary kids walking off in remote areas. And so I would personally appeal to other members of the school board and say, really look at this, and is this really where we want the kids to be walking versus allocating some funding for busing would be my push with the district. How do you guys feel about it?
Well, absolutely. I also recognize the cost to the city to build a trail that doesn't exist, that's just a temporary solution. That money could be much better saved and used in busing. Like, why would we construct something that's just temporary like this when there's busing options? It just, if it's a fiscal issue for the school district, I think we would benefit from having a conversation about that.
And a couple of real quick points, and I don't mean to step on Jonathan's toes here, but there is obviously some housing development along the east side of that trail, so it's not as remote as it once was, but there are certainly some remote areas. We're very cognizant of that, so if this is the option that is ultimately enacted, there will be a lot of proactive activity on our part to ensure that we're paying pretty close attention when there are kids utilizing that safe walk route. It's certainly not ideal, but.
How close will this trail go to the construction sites that are going to be going on too? Taking elementary school kids and putting them right next to houses under construction is an invitation for
Well, that's what I was
problems
gonna
too.
say is that all of that's under construction
Yeah.
and it's all torn up, it's all somewhat dangerous. So I guess my question would be if we can find a way to do the busing thing, do we have, we have to have a safe walking route anyway.
Yes.
So the question would be, do we spend a bunch of money on one that isn't really that much safer? Or do we keep it as is and work with the school district to encourage the use of whatever alternative we come up with?
Sorry. So
Because we have to do, there has to be.
we have to do something. There has to be a designated route. In the discussions that we've had with the district, it was less an issue of expense on their part and more an issue of staffing, being able to have enough bus drivers that they could add this to their route. So that's certainly something
tough.
that they're wrestling with right now. The construction issue exists on either side, but we would certainly advocate that the trail route right now, as it stands, is significantly safer than down Main Street, even though both are under construction or in construction areas. We just wouldn't feel safe allowing kids to utilize the Main Street access without some type of a physical barrier between the traffic and the safe walk route. So there's some costs incurred in that as well. And in our discussions, some of it surrounded the fact that because this is a city-owned trail system, we would spend money at some point in the future to construct the trail anyway. And so this was kind of looked at as maybe we're accelerating that project a little bit, but we're also able to accomplish trying to find a safer route in the temporary meantime.
I mean, my kind of follow-up question is, okay, well, we can't just not do one, right? And
Yeah.
What's the timeline on this project, or like the impact of this temporary safe walk route?
Yeah, so the obvious timeline crunch that we have is to be done prior to school beginning.
Yeah, but the length of it, if we chose one or the other, the duration of that
Oh,
fix.
yeah, it would just be temporary for this school year that's coming up. That would be only that time frame.
sorry, the second part of my question, I'm looking at Wendy, is the trail part. It's not like, if we spend whatever funds it takes to do this route, this is planned on being part of a trail or the majority of it, so it's not like we're gonna put it in and then tear it all out.
So I would like to add a bit of a clarification. So the portion that is going to stay and maintain as a trail, a lot of it is actually existing. And it's hard to actually point out right here, but so you could, if I'm starting from left to right on the yellow, you see kind of, it takes a circular pattern. And then and it starts to wind east. And then it comes up right by the arrow of the temporary safe walk route. All of that, we do not anticipate utilizing, at least correct. So we have, oh, thanks, John.
The remainder portion, especially kind of through the middle of that
So this
panel.
piece, this
is
piece
part
right
of the
here,
plan, right?
that piece right there would not be, in fact, is not
we can't see
anticipated
what
to
you're
stay.
pointing to.
That would be a throwaway, if you will.
So everything east of so the C is the throwaway.
So, and let me add another clarification.
There it is. Yeah, I see it.
Is this, however, oh. Thanks, Cody. This piece is already an access road already. So there's minimum work needed. Ooh, if I
But
can do
that other
green.
piece has a lot of topography.
Yes. So this piece right here would all need to get regraded until you touch again at the end of that. So that is
Down into the road.
and I'm gonna go back to blue. That piece right there is also existing, and it's somewhat of a gravel road now. So the green would be, to better say, that is the throwaway piece. And then everything else beyond that in east is an existing asphalt path. Now, we have selected this alignment because it essentially, I would say it stays out of construction. It stays away. The path is outside of active construction. The limit of their disturbance is not to allow them to get into these areas.
No, and to coordinate with what it's gonna be at Smart, Perfect, and work with the school district for something even safer would be fantastic.
We'd be staffing with crossing guards, I assume, or some other,
Wherever it's warranted for school crossing, certainly. Across Main Street around the 7300 area would certainly, I would assume, meet the specifications of the MUTCD for crossing guards. The trail system itself would likely be officer patrolled
during those hours.
during those crossing times, just when we have an increase in kids. And really the time sensitivity issue comes in that The district by statute is required to have their SNAP plans turned into UDOT by July 1st. And so we meet with the district typically in February, March to finalize all those plans so that they have time to take them back to the district administration and go through their safety council prior to their submission deadline. So there's certainly a time sensitivity to it.
I'm assuming there's going to be a temporary road for access for cars, staff, and parents into the school during this next year.
It'll be
So
completed.
this route right here, actually, will all be completed prior to school beginning.
So it's that only section on Main Street that's the, okay.
Yeah,
Yes, just
the
getting
the
kids
road
out.
will have continued use for vehicular access through construction, just unsafe for safe walk around.
Yeah, so I guess whatever we can do in, sitting down with the school board, I know that meeting is supposed to be coming up pretty soon. They want to sit down with a couple members of the council. Anything that we can do in communicating with the school board to try and help reiterate that we sure, and I can sympathize, I think all of us can sympathize with trying to hire another bus driver. Can't get drivers for a lot of different things, but
I might suggest as an added item of what our tentative approach on this as we're getting into this territory is that we continue to do the design, right?
Yeah.
And work forward to keep progression moving forward. In the event that the board or the district is against that, then we're ready to go to bid. We would obviously need to come to you with the construction contract. So that would obviously be the point in which we, start spending money, and you would know that we would come to you at that point.
okay.
So anyway, that was mostly an update and soliciting any additional feedback than which you guys have for us.
That's all I have. Mayor, do you have anything? Okay. All right, we'll move on to our consent agenda, 8.1, approval of the January 12th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
I have a motion by Jared and a second by Teddy. Steve?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Mayor? And I'll vote yes. Okay, number 9, future meetings. On February 15th, 2022 is the City Council Strategic Planning Meeting at 5 p.m. On February 17th, 2022, the Planning Commission meeting will be at 7 p.m. And on February 23rd, 2022, City Council work meeting at 5:30 p.m. and followed by the City Council meeting at 7 p.m. Our upcoming events, we have our election redistricting open house at City Hall at 6 p.m.
Wow.
Okay, it's Thursday, tomorrow night, right? Tomorrow night. And then we have our daddy-daughter dance at City Hall at 5 p.m. on Saturday night. So we invite you to come and participate in those events. I will now take a motion to move into closed session.
Motion to temporarily recess the city council meeting to convene in closed session for the purpose to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation and the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property as provided by Utah Code annotated section 52-4-205.
Second.
I have a motion by Steve, a second by Teddy. Mayor? Jared?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and we'll move into closed session.
Gentlemen, don't forget
didn't wanna-
Monday's Valentine's Day. Don't mess that up.
I didn't want to jinx it. 7:59, there's only one other meeting that I can remember in 6 years where we ended this